Along the winding backroads of West Virginia, where mist clings to the hills and ancient forests loom. By day, they seem quiet, picturesque, and inviting, with old houses lining narrow lanes and the soft murmur of distant streams. By night, the veil lifts and the past returns. Shadows stretch across deserted streets. And the air carries whispers of villagers long gone, of secrets buried beneath foundations. And of tragedies that refuse to be forgotten. Visitors report seeing pale figures pacing along the streets, ghostly hands pressing against windows, and shadows moving among abandoned homes where no one lives. Some swear the forests themselves remember every scream, every sorrow, every step taken along the backroads. A few who linger too long say the villages themselves seem alive, creaking and groaning under the weight of memory, warning the living to turn back. Tonight, my dear friend, we will step into these haunted backroad villages. We will walk along narrow lanes, peer into abandoned homes and barns, and listen to whispers carried on the wind. We will uncover the most haunted backroad villages in West Virginia, where every porch, every window, and every corner holds a story. And the restless refuse to leave. So tell me, if you were walking alone down a backroad at midnight and a pale figure appeared at the edge of a village, staring silently, would you step closer to see who it is? Or would you retreat toward the highway before the shadows notice you? Hello, my dear friend. I am so glad you are here tonight, safe and warm, because the backroad villages we are about to explore are not for the faint of heart. West Virginia's backroad villages were once centers of life, labor, and community. Over the decades, many were abandoned, left to decay, or claimed by misfortune and tragedy. Yet the history remains. Visitors report shadows moving along streets, figures appearing and vanishing in homes, and lights flickering with no electricity. Some have felt icy hands brush their arms or shoulders. Others have heard whispers, faint laughter, or distant cries carried on the wind. The air in these villages at night is thick with fog, damp earth, and memory. Stairs creak under invisible weight. Windows rattle with no wind. And doors open without cause. Some have seen lanterns floating above abandoned homes with no hand holding them. Others feel the presence of unseen watchers pacing silently beside them. And many swear that the villages themselves seem alive, groaning beneath roads and porches, warning those who dare to walk them. Before we explore these haunted backroad villages together, my friend, I want to ask you something and I hope you will answer it in the comments. Take a deep breath. Steady your heartbeat. And let us explore the most haunted backroad villages in West Virginia. Blackwood Village rests in quiet desolation, its narrow lanes lined with crumbling homes whose weathered facades tell stories of years gone by. Roofs sag under the weight of time, paint peels from wooden boards, and broken shutters sway in the wind. By day, the village appears still, frozen in an eternal moment. But as night falls, a different presence awakens. Figures appear pacing the streets, moving with purpose yet remaining elusive. Shadows stretch and contract along the lane, shifting with the subtle glow of lanterns that flicker without source. The light casts uneven patterns across walls and cobblestones, illuminating fragments of movement that vanish as quickly as they appear. Visitors walking through the village report a sense of being observed, as if the very houses themselves are aware of each passing step. The air carries a weight of history, dense with the memories of those who once inhabited the homes. Footsteps echo softly along empty streets, sometimes approaching from behind, sometimes fading into the distance. The rhythm is unpredictable, yet deliberate, as though the village itself guides the motions of these unseen figures. Every corner turned reveals glimpses of movement in shadowed windows or across abandoned porches. Lanterns ignite and extinguish without explanation, their light dancing across the cracked walls and warped timbers. The figures move in tandem with these sudden illuminations, appearing in one place and vanishing in another, leaving an impression of continuity beyond the human eye. Visitors often feel drawn toward certain alleyways or homes, compelled by the subtle motion of unseen guides, yet always aware that their presence is watched. The village seems alive in small, imperceptible ways. Doors creak under no visible pressure. Floorboards groan with invisible weight. Soft whispers echo faintly from empty rooms. The sounds are not threatening, but they are deliberate, commanding attention and heightening the sense of consciousness within the village. Blackwood Village exists as a space where past and present converge. Its inhabitants long gone yet continuing their routines in ways imperceptible to most. Windows reveal brief glimpses of movement, curtains flutter as shadows pass, and porch swings sway gently without wind. Curtains flutter as shadows pass, and porch swings sway gently without wind. And porch swings sway gently without wind. Figures traverse the streets in quiet repetition, retracing steps from a time before the village fell silent. Retracing steps from a time before the village fell silent. Each element contributes to a profound sense of life within a place that outwardly appears abandoned. At the heart of the village, the main lane narrows, flanked by houses whose walls lean precariously. Here, the figurisa movements become more pronounced. Visitors sense that they are not merely witnessing ghosts but are part of an ongoing rhythm, a continuation of life that refuses to fade entirely. Footsteps echo in patterns, lanterns flicker in time with their motion, and the very lanes themselves seem to respond to each passerby. The experience of moving through Blackwood Village at night is both disorienting and compelling. Shadows appear in windows that hold no glass, footsteps approach on cobblestones that remain undisturbed. Footsteps approach on cobblestones that remain undisturbed, and lanterns pulse with a soft, unearthly light. Lanterns pulse with a soft, unearthly light. Every sense is heightened, the sound of distant movement blends with the whisper of wind through the broken eaves. The sound of distant movement blends with the whisper of wind through the broken eaves, creating an atmosphere. Creating an atmosphere that is both immersive and unforgettable. Figures pause at intersections, their forms just beyond clarity. And then continue their pacing, seemingly unconcerned by the presence of any visitor. The village itself exerts a quiet influence, guiding attention, shaping movement, and creating a sense of connection across time. Each step taken along the lane is mirrored in the subtle shifts of shadows and light, leaving a lasting impression of presence and memory intertwined. By the end of the night, the village settles once more into stillness. Lanterns dim, shadows retract. And the faint echoes of footsteps fade into silence. Yet, the sense of life persists, a reminder that Blackwood Village is not simply abandoned, but preserved in a state of perpetual motion, inhabited by the echoes of those who walked its streets long ago. Where history lingers in the corners, where shadows move with intent, and where lanterns flicker with no source. A space where time is fluid, and the past continues its quiet, deliberate pacing along narrow lanes and weathered streets, eternal and unyielding. Even in daylight, remnants of movement remain. Windows catch light at strange angles. Doors are slightly ajar as if recently used. And the air holds a lingering sense of expectancy. Blackwood Village is a testament to continuity. A place where the past has not entirely relinquished its presence. And where unseen figures continue their nightly vigil. Along cracked streets and beneath flickering lanterns. For those who enter, the village offers a singular experience. To witness life that exists beyond the visible. To feel footsteps echo where none should tread. And to understand that some places are alive in ways that defy explanation. Holding memory, movement, and presence in quiet perpetuity. Blackwood Village endures as a realm where the ordinary and the spectral converge. A village in which every shadow, every flicker of light, and every soft footstep tells a story that will not be forgotten. Widowa's hollow village lies shrouded in quiet desolation, its weathered homes and narrow streets bearing the weight of years long past. The village earned its name from residents who vanished decades ago, leaving behind empty houses, shuttered windows, and the subtle echoes of lives once lived. Visitors approaching the settlement often pause at the edge of the overgrown roads, sensing a stillness that is heavier than the absence of people. Shadows cling to the corners of porches and alleys, moving almost imperceptibly, yet always present. The streets are lined with homes of faded wood and peeling paint. Each porch tells a story of abandonment, chairs left in disarray, windows cracked, and doors slightly ajar. Figures appear in the shadows, sometimes leaning against railings or pacing silently along the walkways. They are fleeting, glimpsed out of the corner of the eye, vanishing when looked at directly. Their presence is subtle but unmistakable, leaving a lingering tension that permeates the village air. The village paths wind between the structures, overgrown with weeds and tangled roots that twist along the cracked sidewalks. Every step echoes faintly in the silence, yet often accompanied by a soft murmur or the distant sound of footsteps that do not belong to any living visitor. The breeze carries whispers that drift across abandoned yards and empty rooms, faint cries that seem to rise from within the walls themselves. It is a place where the past feels alive, where memory and shadow intertwine seamlessly. Inside the homes, time appears frozen. Furniture remains in the positions it was left, personal belongings untouched yet somehow telling a story of abrupt departure. Shadows shift along the walls and floors, figures moving slowly, deliberately, as if maintaining a silent watch. The air feels heavier in enclosed spaces, carrying a mixture of dust, decay, and the subtle energy of those who once lived here. Visitors report the sensation of being observed, of subtle movements in their peripheral vision, and of whispers that vanish when directly confronted. The porches serve as thresholds between the interior and exterior, spaces where shadows gather and linger. Figures pace slowly, their movements purposeful yet fluid, sometimes crouching near steps or railings as though waiting. The willow trees and overgrown hedges that line the street sway in rhythm with the wind. The creak of a door. The shifting of debris underfoot. And the faint echo of voices that do not belong to the living. Throughout the village, the atmosphere is charged with anticipation. Visitors feel it in the brush of air against their skin. The subtle shifting of shadows in the corner of their vision. And the distant murmur of voices that echo with melancholy and longing. Every step taken along the narrow paths and porches carries the weight of history. Of those who once lived and those who vanished without a trace. The village square, once a hub of activity, now lies silent and empty. Distant cries carried on the wind, faint yet persistent, mingling with the soft laughter that seems to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. The square embodies the essence of the village, a space where absence becomes presence and silence holds a story. At night, Widow's Hollow village transforms into a more enigmatic place. The moonlight casts long, twisting shadows along the streets and porches. Figures appear more frequently in the periphery, pacing and watching silently. The wind carries whispers through broken windows and open doorways, soft cries that drift across empty rooms and abandoned yards. The willow trees sway violently in the nocturnal gusts, their branches forming shapes that seem alive, shadows dancing across the walls and streets. Visitors often describe the sensation of being followed, a presence pacing behind them, never seen directly yet always sensed. Footsteps echo along the wooden porches and overgrown pathways, matching and occasionally diverging from the steps of those who walk the village lanes. Soft murmurs and faint laughter appear to drift from nowhere, wrapping around the corners of houses and following visitors from street to street. The village feels alive with memory, a space where the boundary between the living and the vanished is tenuous and shifting. Every element of Widow's Hollow village, from the twisting shadows to the swaying willow trees, from the abandoned homes to the distant cries, contributes to an atmosphere of unease and fascination. Figures appear and disappear, shadows cling to corners, and whispers carry along the streets. The village is a repository of memory, a witness to disappearance, and a place where the past continues to exist alongside the present, unseen yet profoundly felt. As visitors leave the village, the sensation lingers of the soft sway of willow branches against the wind, the faint echo of a figure pacing along a porch, the distant cries and murmurs that seem to follow them even as they retreat. The soft sway of willow branches against the wind. The faint echo of a figure pacing along a porch. The distant cries and murmurs that seem to follow them even as they retreat. That refuses to be forgotten. Widowa's Hollow Village is not simply a collection of abandoned homes. It is a living testament to memory, absence, and the unseen presence. Carrying the whispers and soft cries of a past that refuses to be forgotten. Ashen Grove Village lies nestled among dense, twisted trees, a place seemingly forgotten by time. The walls of the cottages are peeling, paint flaking under years of neglect, and the floors sag with age. Rotting from the constant passage of wind and rain. The air carries a faint chill, a weight that settles upon the skin, hinting at presences unseen. Figures crouch in the corners of abandoned houses, visible only at the edge of perception. They do not move with haste, but rather with a deliberate, quiet patience, observing all who venture into the village. Their forms are indistinct, shadows of what they might once have been, yet their presence is undeniable. Visitors often report icy hands brushing against their arms. The sensation is sudden, fleeting, and impossible to locate. It leaves a shiver that travels down the spine, a subtle reminder that Ashen Grove is inhabited by more than the decay of wood and stone. The village is silent in ways that feel unnatural. Even the wind seems to avoid the narrow streets. And the rustling of leaves carries an eerie stillness. As if the air itself records and magnifies each step. Sometimes, the faint sound of murmured voices drifts from empty homes. Indistinct and fleeting, vanishing before comprehension can take hold. Time in Ashen Grove Village moves differently. A short walk along the cobblestone streets can stretch, moments lengthening into a lingering awareness of the surroundings. Doors that appear close may seem distant, and corners twist unexpectedly, creating a disorienting sense of both familiarity and foreignness. Every structure tells a story. The crumbling cottages, the sagging barns, the remnants of walls and fences all speak of lives once lived, of routines long ceased, and of the silent witnesses who remain. Figures crouched in corners seem to guard these memories, their watchful presence a testament to the endurance of what has passed. Shadows behave unpredictably. Shadows extend along walls independently of light sources, slipping across floors. Shadows extend along walls independently of light sources, slipping across floors and climbing along staircases without explanation. A shadow may linger in one spot before stretching toward a window. As if drawn by some unseen force. Observers feel the weight of these shadows. A subtle pressure on the senses that is both unnerving and compelling. Visitors find that their own perceptions are altered. Sounds carry differently, distances are difficult to judge, and the air feels dense with the accumulation of countless unspoken histories. The village shapes awareness, demanding focus, and compelling attention to the smallest details: a swaying branch, a broken shutter, a shadow that moves when no one else is present. The houses and streets preserve memory in unexpected ways. Small signs: a child's toy abandoned on a doorstep, a chair overturned in a corner. Suggest stories that never fully unfold. Figures in the corners watch over these fragments, preserving their presence and ensuring that the village does not completely surrender to silence. Interactions are subtle yet undeniable. A slight movement at the edge of vision, a brush of cold air, or a whispered murmur can draw a visitor's attention. These experiences are never violent, yet they leave a lingering awareness. A sense that one is never entirely alone in Ashen Grove Village. Night deepens the village's atmosphere. Shadows lengthen, figures become more distinct, and the sensation of unseen hands brushing against the living intensifies. Lanterns, torches, or moonlight are unnecessary. The village illuminates itself with a quiet, spectral glow, revealing forms only partially, just enough to make the observer question the reality of what they see. Every element contributes to the story. The village is a living repository of memory and presence, where every detail, however small, contributes to the atmosphere and the lingering impression upon those who enter. Time spent within Ashen Grove Village lingers in memory long after departure. The sensation of cold fingers brushing their arms. The unsteady movement of shadows. The quiet observation of crouched figures. The village impresses itself upon the mind, creating a haunting yet compelling awareness of what it means to encounter a place where the past and present intertwine so tangibly. Even in apparent stillness, the village is alive. The wind moves differently, floors creak with the weight of unseen steps, and shadows remain in constant subtle motion. Figures crouched in corners are never fully at rest, watching, waiting, and maintaining the rhythm of a place that has long since ceased to host ordinary life. Ashen Grove Village endures. Its buildings may crumble, paint may flake, and floors may rot. Yet its presence is persistent. Figures remain in the corners. Shadows drift independently. And visitors continue to feel the subtle, chilling brush of unseen hands. The village holds its stories, memories, and presences in quiet vigilance, offering an experience that is both haunting and unforgettable. The village exists in duality. By night, it transforms into a realm where memory, shadow, and presence converge. Figures glide, shadows act independently, and unseen hands mark the living, creating a narrative that is silent, persistent, and immersive. Visitors leave Ashen Grove Village with more than recollection. They carry an impression of awareness, a sense of being observed and touched by forces beyond comprehension. The village impresses itself upon the mind, leaving an indelible sense that the world is broader and stranger than it appears, and that even abandoned places may harbor secrets and presences that endure through time. Hollow Creek Village rests quietly along the edge of a small creek, its buildings huddled together as if seeking safety from the surrounding forest. The streets are narrow and winding, cobblestones worn smooth by time and forgotten footsteps. Moonlight glints off the water, casting faint reflections that dance across the walls of the cottages. Shadows glide silently along the streets, moving with a grace that suggests life, yet no figure is ever fully visible. The village has a rhythm of its own. Windows flicker with the faintest hint of light, though no lamp burns within. Visitors report the sensation of being watched, a weight on their shoulders, or a subtle shift in the air as they pass from one alley to the next. Every step taken feels guided by the village itself, as if the streets curve and stretch to lead travelers deeper into its quiet heart. Along the creek, the water moves sluggishly, its surface. Lanterns appear along the banks and walkways, glowing dimly without hand or flame. Glowing dimly without hand or flame to support them. They drift gently, illuminating the edges of the streets and the corners of buildings, revealing shapes that vanish the moment one looks directly at them. Figures emerge briefly, standing still by the riverbank or under a tree, only to fade into the darkness as though swallowed by the night. The village hums with quiet sounds that defy explanation. Faint whispers echo from narrow alleyways, mixing with the gentle rush of water. Footsteps fall softly on cobblestones where no traveler walks. The air carries a chill that is not entirely from the creek or the evening breeze. Some visitors have described fleeting glimpses of pale faces at windows or behind shutters, eyes that follow for a heartbeat before disappearing, leaving only the memory of their gaze. Every building tells a story. The town hall, a small structure with shuttered windows, exudes a presence that dominates its surroundings. Inside, shadows move along empty corridors, doors open and close without warning, and a faint murmuring fills the air. Visitors often feel drawn toward it, compelled by an invisible force, yet hesitant to enter, sensing that the building itself is alive with memories of those long gone. The streets themselves shift under moonlight. Alleys appear longer or shorter than they should. And pathways curve unexpectedly, guiding travelers along routes that seem designed by an unseen hand. A figure may appear across the water, pacing slowly, then vanish when approached. The village is a living maze, and every turn, every corner, seems imbued with purpose beyond comprehension. Throughout Hollow Creek Village, the presence is subtle but persistent. Visitors feel it most in the quiet moments between the sounds of the creek and the whispers of the wind. A faint chanting can sometimes be heard, carried along the streets and through open doorways. It rises and falls, harmonizing with the distant rustle of leaves and the creaking of timbered roofs. No one sees the source, yet the sound is undeniable, wrapping the village in a layer of unease that cannot be ignored. The village is not static. Shadows shift with deliberate motion, lanterns drift to reveal paths yet to be explored, and figures appear and vanish as if the night itself is populated by watchers. Every experience is both disorienting and mesmerizing, a mixture of fear and fascination. Visitors often remark that they feel guided, almost protected, as they navigate the streets, but never fully in control of where they are led. Hollow Creek Village demands attention and respect, rewarding those who observe carefully with fleeting glimpses of its hidden life. In the central square, the creek widens and pools near a small bridge. Figures appear along the bridge rails, some standing silently, others pacing slowly. Whispers and faint laughter echo across the water, creating a sense of presence. Those who linger feel the weight of history pressing down, as if the village remembers every visitor, every inhabitant, and every passing moment in its long, secret life. Every corner, every street, and every building contributes to the haunting narrative of Hollow Creek Village. The interplay of shadow and light, movement and stillness, sound and silence, creates an immersive experience that lingers long after one departs. Visitors leave carrying the memory of pale faces, drifting lanterns, shifting streets, and the feeling of being watched. Aware that the village continues its quiet life, undisturbed yet ever present. Hollow Creek Village is more than a collection of buildings along a creek. It is a living memory, a place where shadows move with purpose, lanterns guide without hands, and whispers tell stories of lives long past. The village endures, a timeless guardian of its secrets, watching and guiding. Its presence lingering in the mind and imagination long after the final steps are taken away from its silent streets. Each experience in Hollow Creek Village is unique, shaped by the interplay of light, shadow, and sound. Figures appear along streets, lanterns float above the creek. And the gentle hum of unseen life reminds visitors that this village is alive in ways that defy explanation. It is a place where curiosity meets caution, where every shadow could tell a story, and where the ordinary and the supernatural coexist, creating a haunting, cinematic experience that stays with those who enter. Hollow Creek Village stands as a testament to the power of memory, presence, and mystery. Its silent streets, drifting lanterns, and fleeting figures offer a journey into the unknown. A space where time bends, and the past is always present. Visitors leave with an awareness that this village watches, waits, and endures. A living narrative etched into every corner, every building, and every ripple of the creek that runs silently through its heart. Bloodstone Village sits in quiet desolation, its streets and homes carrying the weight of multiple tragedies long past. Roofs sag under the burden of time, walls are cracked and worn, and chimneys lean precariously toward the overgrown gardens below. By day, the village seems almost lifeless, frozen in a state of decay. Yet when night falls, an entirely different presence awakens. Figures rise from the houses at night, their movements deliberate yet fleeting, appearing in doorways or along shadowed paths before vanishing as though swallowed by the darkness. Lanterns flicker with no one holding them, casting an eerie glow across crooked fences and cobblestone lanes. Every flicker illuminates a fragment of motion, revealing the presence of figures that cannot be touched or spoken to, only observed. Visitors who wander the village at night describe a sensation of being watched. Eyes seem to follow their movements, from darkened windows and partially open doors. As if the very structures themselves are alive with memory and intent. Soft whispers drift through the air, faint yet distinct, carrying names and murmurs that seem to emerge from the houses themselves. These voices echo along narrow streets and abandoned courtyards, creating a rhythm that is both unsettling and compelling. The village pulses with subtle life. Floorboards creak under invisible footsteps, doors sway gently on their hinges, and lanterns flare for a moment before fading into darkness. Doors sway gently on their hinges, and lanterns flare for a moment before fading into darkness. And lanterns flare for a moment before fading into darkness. Figures pace in recurring patterns, moving along the main street or wandering between houses, their presence constant yet intangible. There is a sense that the village itself guides these movements, creating an ongoing dance between shadow and structure. Creating an ongoing dance between shadow and structure. Windows catch dim light in ways that seem unnatural. Curtains flutter as figures pass unseen. Porches sway slightly, as if responding to the weight of invisible feet. Even the wind seems to carry the faint scent of fires long extinguished, mingling with the earthy aroma of overgrown gardens and broken walls. All these elements combine to make the village feel lived in, inhabited by echoes of the past that refuse to fade completely. At the heart of Bloodstone Village, the main lane narrows, flanked by homes whose foundations groan under the passage of time. Here, the figurisa movements are more pronounced. They traverse the streets with purpose, crossing thresholds that no longer exist and walking in patterns that repeat night after night. Visitors often feel compelled to follow, drawn by movement that is imperceptible yet undeniable. Footsteps echo behind them, soft and deliberate, sometimes merging with whispers that call their names. The interplay of shadow and light heightens the village's eerie atmosphere. Lanterns flicker without source, revealing glimpses of figures that vanish when approached. Shadows stretch across walls and alleyways, forming shapes that suggest movement just beyond perception. Every step a visitor takes is mirrored by subtle shifts in light and sound, leaving a sense of connection to the village that is impossible to explain. Through the night, the village feels alive in the smallest of ways. Floorboards groan under unseen weight. Shutters rattle as though moved by hands that no longer exist. And faint voices echo from empty rooms. Each sound, each flicker of light, reinforces the feeling that the village holds onto its past, replaying events and routines that occurred long ago. Visitors may walk its streets and alleys, yet they are never alone, enveloped in a presence that is invisible yet palpable. As the hours pass, Bloodstone Village continues its nocturnal rhythm. Figures move silently along lanes, pausing at doorways, retracing paths, and wandering between homes as if carrying out tasks from a life that once was. Whispers echo across the village, names spoken softly, drawing attention to corners and corridors otherwise hidden from view. Lanterns flare unexpectedly, illuminating fragments of motion and then fading again into darkness, leaving only memory of the encounter. By dawn, the village settles once more. Figures retreat into the shadows, whispers dissipate. And the soft, deliberate footsteps vanish. Yet the sensation of life remains. Bloodstone Village exists in a delicate balance between memory and reality. It is a village held in a fragile equilibrium, where past and present converge, and where unseen inhabitants continue to move through the shadows. In a world where the boundaries between reality and madness are blurred, Bloodstone Village stands as a testament to the enduring power of the unknown. A place where the horrors that lurk in the shadows are always waiting, and where the darkness is always just a step away. Visitors leave the village with an enduring sense of presence. Windows, doors, and lanterns seem to retain fragments of movement. Shadows linger along lanes, and the soft echo of footsteps remains imprinted in the mind. Bloodstone Village is a place where tragedy and memory intertwine, where figures move through the night with purpose, and where whispers call out to those who walk its streets, ensuring that the past is never forgotten. Even under the morning sun, traces of the night remain. The village holds on to its history in every crooked wall, every cracked cobblestone, and every silent porch. Bloodstone Village exists as a living memory, a place where the tragedies of the past continue to shape the present, and where figures rise nightly to inhabit the spaces left behind. It is a village that endures, quietly alive in ways that defy explanation, inviting those who enter to witness the ongoing rhythm of its unseen inhabitants. Bloodstone Village is a haunting testament to the endurance of memory. Shadows glide across homes, whispers float through the air, and figures continue their silent movements night after night. Visitors may leave the village, but the sense of life, the feeling of being watched, and the echoes of past tragedies remain, lingering long after the streets have emptied. A perpetual reminder of a place where the past never truly dies. Ironclad Village sits in quiet isolation, a place where time seems to have paused. The streets are lined with weathered buildings of iron and stone, their surfaces scarred by decades of wind and rain. Old iron gates creak in the wind, moving with a slow rhythm that suggests both age and vigilance. Visitors approaching the village feel an immediate stillness, a weight in the air that presses against the senses, hinting at histories both known and forgotten. Shadows gather along the edges of the streets, shifting in ways that seem almost deliberate, as if the village itself is aware of each step taken within its boundaries. Figures appear along the streets, pacing silently. They are not always visible at first, glimpsed from the corner of an eye. Their movements measured and purposeful. Some stand at doorways, others linger near street corners, blending into the shadows. They do not approach or speak, yet their presence is undeniable. Visitors report a subtle tension, a feeling of being watched, followed by the faintest echo of footsteps that seem to mirror their own. Every street and alleyway carries the memory of those who have walked it before, some of them long vanished. The architecture of Ironclad Village contributes to its unsettling aura. Buildings rise with a mix of iron beams and stone walls, their facades marked with rust and weathering. Iron staircases lead to balconies and walkways that overlook narrow lanes. And the creak of metal underfoot is often accompanied by faint echoes that do not belong to any living visitor. Even in daylight, the village holds a sense of stillness, the kind that suggests stories suspended between the past and the present. At night, the shadows deepen, moving independently, following and retreating, whispering along the edges of perception. Walking through the streets, visitors notice details that tell of interrupted lives. Figures appear intermittently near these spaces, pacing silently or standing watch. Soft murmurs float through the alleys, blending with the wind, creating an auditory layer that is almost imperceptible yet undeniably there. Footsteps echo along iron-plated streets, sometimes just behind, sometimes elsewhere entirely, leaving a sensation of being accompanied by unseen residents. The village center is a convergence of narrow streets and small squares, a place where the old iron gates stand sentinel. Figures often gather near these spaces, moving with deliberate slowness, their paths crossing and diverging in ways that seem almost ritualistic. Visitors feel the presence of history in every corner, the weight of absences, the echo of past lives, and the subtle movements of figures who never speak yet are always present. The wind carries distant metallic creaks, blending with faint murmurs and the rustle of leaves in hidden courtyards. Each sound, each shadow, contributes to the sense that the village itself is alive in a quiet, patient way. At night, Ironclad Village transforms further. The moonlight casts long shadows along the iron and stone facades. Figures appear more frequently, pacing slowly, watching from staircases, balconies, and alleys. Figures appear more frequently, pacing slowly, watching from staircases, balconies, and alleys. The echo of footsteps is more pronounced, following visitors in uneven rhythms that suggest deliberate attention. The echo of footsteps is more pronounced, following visitors in uneven rhythms that suggest deliberate attention. Soft whispers seem to rise from the buildings themselves, drifting across open spaces, weaving through the iron frameworks, and brushing against the skin of those who wander. Soft whispers seem to rise from the buildings themselves, drifting across open spaces, weaving through the iron frameworks, and brushing against the skin of those who wander. The village is not merely a place of stillness but a living archive of presence and absence. The village is not merely a place of stillness but a living archive of presence and absence. A space where time, memory, and shadow intersect. Visitors often feel the sensation of being accompanied, of eyes upon them even when nothing is directly visible. Figures emerge along streets, stand silently at doorways, and vanish when approached. The sound of footsteps echoing behind or alongside visitors reinforces the feeling of shared presence. Shadows move in unexpected ways, swaying along walls, stretching and bending with an almost conscious fluidity. Each element of the creaking iron, the whispering wind, the distant murmur contributes to a layered experience that is immersive and unnerving, yet compellingly mysterious. Every corner of Ironclad Village is imbued with the tension of stories untold and lives interrupted. Figures pacing silently along streets. Iron gates that move in ghostly rhythm. And soft echoes that trail behind each visitor all combine to create a place suspended between the living and the departed. The village holds memory in its walls and streets, shadows in its alleys, and whispers in the air, maintaining a presence that is both invisible and profoundly felt. As visitors depart, the experience lingers of the faint creak of a gate, the echo of footsteps that seem to follow along empty streets. The awareness that the village continues to watch and wait. Ironclad Village is more than a collection of iron and stone. It is a space where absence is a presence, where memory moves with the wind, and where figures silently pace the streets, maintaining the essence of the village long after lives have vanished. Each shadow, each sound, each subtle movement carries the enduring history of a place where time and presence intertwine. Mistvale Village lies shrouded in fog, a place where the streets themselves seem suspended between memory and shadow. The mist drifts silently across cobblestones and narrow lanes, curling around corners and weaving between houses long abandoned. It clings to every surface, softening edges and obscuring details, until the village feels less like a collection of buildings and more like a living, breathing presence. Figures emerge along the lanes, half seen at the edge of vision. They do not hurry, do not announce themselves, but glide with a quiet purpose, moving in ways that feel both familiar and uncanny. Their forms are vague, indistinct, yet their presence is palpable, a subtle weight upon the senses that cannot be ignored. Visitors often speak of pale eyes appearing through the mist, observing silently from doorways or alleyways. These eyes do not blink, do not turn away, but seem to follow each step along the streets. The sensation is not threatening, yet it leaves a deep impression, a shiver that travels along the spine and reminds all who enter that Mistvale Village is inhabited by more than mere shadows. The air is heavy with stillness, yet it is not empty. Every creak of timber, every whisper of wine through the eaves, carries a faint echo of the village's past. Footsteps sound differently here, sharper and clearer than in the world beyond the fog. Conversations seem to linger long after voices have faded. And the faint murmur of names half-remembered drifts from the alleys. Time itself behaves differently within Mistvale Village. A walk down a single street can stretch, moments elongating as the fog thickens. And twists perception. Doorways seem closer than they are, corners shift subtly. And the familiar becomes strange. It is a place that demands attention, drawing the visitor into its rhythm, forcing awareness of every subtle movement, every flicker of shadow. The buildings themselves tell silent stories. Peeling paint, sagging roofs, and broken windows speak of lives once lived. And routines long abandoned. Yet there is a presence that lingers, a sense that the people who once inhabited the village have not entirely departed. Figures along the lanes appear to watch over these remnants, guarding memories, observing those who dare to wander the streets. Shadows behave unpredictably. Shadows stretch along walls without regard for light sources, drift across streets and climb staircases in ways that defy explanation. Sometimes a shadow appears to detach from its origin, moving independently as though guided by some unseen hand. Observers feel the subtle pressure of these shadows, a quiet weight that presses upon awareness, unsettling yet compelling. The village exerts a quiet influence over perception. Sounds carry differently, distances are difficult to gauge. And the fog seems to muffle more than it reveals. Even the simplest details, a swaying lantern, a broken fence post, the shimmer of a puddly gain significance. Every element contributes to a growing sense that Mistvale Village is a place where the ordinary and the extraordinary overlap. Small traces of past life appear throughout the streets. An overturned cart. A faded sign. A Childa's forgotten Toya. Each hints at stories that are never fully told. Figures along the lanes linger near these traces, as if preserving their meaning. Reminding visitors that the village holds memories that endure even when the living have moved on. Visitors find themselves acutely aware of their own presence. A brush of cold air along the neck, the subtle movement of a figure at the periphery of vision. Or the quiet flicker of eyes through the mist draws attention, creating a sense of connection to the village itself. These experiences are never violent, yet they leave a lasting impression. A deep awareness that the world here is alive in ways beyond ordinary understanding. Night transforms the village further. The fog thickens, figures become more distinct, and the pale eyes in the mist shine with a quiet intensity. Lanterns are unnecessary, the village seems to generate its own illumination, revealing just enough to create unease and fascination in equal measure. Every step along the streets deepens the sense that the visitor is moving through a living repository of memory and presence. The streets, buildings, and figures of Mistvale Village create. Each corner turned, each alleyway explored, adds to the impression that the village exists as a continuous narrative, recorded not in books but in shadow, fog, and presence. Even in silence, the village is active. The wind moves with purpose. Floors creak under invisible weight. And shadows continue their slow, deliberate dance. Figures along the lanes never rest fully. Always watching, always present, maintaining the rhythm of a place that defies conventional understanding of time and space. Mistvale Village endures. Its buildings may crumble, paint may flake, and windows may shatter. Yet its presence is persistent. Figures glide, shadows drift independently. And visitors continue to witness pale eyes glowing through the fog. The village preserves memory, presence, and atmosphere in a way that is both haunting and captivating, leaving an indelible mark on all who enter. Departing the village, visitors carry with them more than recollection. They leave with an acute awareness of being observed, touched, and influenced by forces beyond ordinary comprehension. Mistvale Village lingers in thought and perception, a reminder that even in places abandoned by the living, stories, presences, and memories persist in quiet, enduring ways. In Mistvale Village, the ordinary is intertwined with the spectral. Every step, every shadow, and every movement of mist contributes to a narrative that is subtle, immersive, and unforgettable. Those who wander its streets become aware that the world is larger and stranger than it appears. And that the village itself remains alive, holding stories and presences that endure through time. Shadowbank Village stretches quietly across a low, rolling landscape. Its streets lined with abandoned barns and weathered houses. The wood of the buildings is gray and splintered. Yet the structures hold a presence that defies their decay. The air is thick with the scent of earth and fallen leaves, carrying with it a quiet tension that seems to settle in the bones of anyone who walks these streets. Shadows move with a purpose, gliding silently along pathways as if aware of every step taken by visitors. Figures appear in the corners of vision, pacing quietly along lanes and beside the empty buildings. They vanish when approached, leaving only the echo of imagined movement and the faint feeling of eyes following. The distant rustle of trees or the soft sigh of the wind through broken window frames. The village seems alive in a way that is difficult to define. Doors creak open and shut with no wind, and floorboards shift underfoot as though responding to unseen footsteps. Lanterns appear along the streets, glowing dimly without flame or source. They drift slowly, illuminating the edges of barns and homes, casting shadows that stretch and twist across the ground. Figures pause in these lights, standing as if waiting, only to vanish when observers try to focus on them directly. Each building tells a story. Barns, once bustling with life, now stand silent. Their doors swaying slightly on broken hinges. Windows reveal glimpses of movement within, shadows passing behind curtains or across empty rooms. Houses, long abandoned, exude an aura of quiet dignity, their weathered walls and creaking floors. A testament to the lives once lived there. Visitors often feel compelled to enter, yet hesitation holds them at the threshold. As if the village itself warns them to proceed with caution. The streets wind and curve unpredictably. A lane that appears straight may bend unexpectedly, guiding travelers toward areas they did not anticipate. Shadows along these paths seem deliberate, leading observers deeper into the village or holding them in place at certain points. The effect is subtle, a combination of perception and suggestion, yet it heightens the sense that the village is a living entity, aware and responsive. Sounds are sparse but potent. Footsteps echo where no one walks, whispers drift along alleys, and faint murmurs rise from within the abandoned structures. Some visitors report hearing laughter, soft and fleeting, carried across the empty streets by the evening breeze. The village breathes with its own rhythm, its soundscape shifting with the movement of the shadows and the flow of the wind through open doorways and broken windows. Along the main street, the remnants of a central square lie quiet beneath the moonlight. Lanterns drift above the cracked pavement, illuminating figures that appear briefly among the ruins. Barns and homes around the square seem to respond to their presence, doors opening and closing slowly, windows reflecting shapes that are not there. Every step taken here is accompanied by the subtle awareness of being observed, and the feeling that the village itself remembers each visitor, as though imprinting them into its long and silent history. The village exudes a tension between beauty and unease. Moonlight highlights the textures of peeling paint, the grain of weathered wood, and the stillness of overgrown yards. Shadows deepen in corners, stretching across streets and creating forms that may or may not be figures. Lanterns drift gracefully, their light catching on surfaces in ways that seem intentional, drawing the eye to areas where movement or presence is felt but not seen. Visitors often sense a continuity beyond the immediate moment. The village appears to hold memory, as if the echoes of past lives linger in the air. Figures appear in glimpses, pacing, standing, watching. The feeling of shoulders brushed or eyes following is persistent, never violent, always subtle, yet profoundly affecting. Hollow spaces seem to breathe and shift, aligning with the rhythm of unseen life. That continues within Shadowbank Village. Every corner, alleyway, and building contributes to the haunting ambience. The village guides, observes, and interacts with those who wander its streets. Shadows and lanterns serve as conduits for the past, and every creak, whisper, and ripple of movement reinforces the sense of an environment that is alive in its own secretive way. Visitors cannot fully grasp the boundaries between reality and perception, yet they are drawn into the experience, carried along by the village's quiet insistence. Shadowbank Village is more than a collection of abandoned buildings and overgrown streets. It is a place where light and shadow interact with perception. Where the wind and whispers tell stories without words. And where every visitor leaves marked, even if only in memory. Lanterns float without hands. Figures pace silently. And the village itself watches. Lanterns float without hands, figures pace silently, and the village itself watches. The experience lingers, leaving a quiet, lasting impression of a place. Suspended between the seen and the unseen, alive with history, mystery, and a presence that cannot be ignored. Each journey through Shadowbank Village is unique. Observers may glimpse figures, hear faint footsteps or whispers, and feel the subtle brushing of presence along their path. The streets bend unexpectedly. The lanterns drift. And shadows stretch across walls and empty yards, creating a cinematic tapestry of atmosphere and unease. The village endures, patient and silent, a guardian of its own stories. Watching over all who enter and leaving them with a memory that persists long after they leave. Shadowbank Village remains a realm where history and the supernatural intertwine, a place of quiet haunting, deliberate presence, and immersive atmosphere. The abandoned barns, the weathered houses, and the shifting streets form a cohesive whole, alive with unseen life. Visitors leave carrying an impression of subtle dread and wonder, aware that the village continues to exist beyond the bounds of ordinary experience, ever present, watching, and shaping the world within its streets. Deadman's Hollow Village sits quietly in a valley, its homes weathered by time and the elements. Roofs sag under the weight of years, windows are dark and empty, and chimneys lean at precarious angles, as if burdened by the memories they hold. By day, the village seems still and lifeless, frozen in a state of abandonment. Yet when night falls, the atmosphere transforms into something entirely different. Figures rise along the streets at night, moving silently between the homes. They appear briefly in doorways or along the narrow paths before vanishing into the darkness. Lanterns flare unexpectedly, casting fleeting light across the cracked cobblestones, illuminating the faint outlines of these ghostly presences. Every flicker reveals a fragment of motion, leaving the sense that the village is alive with echoes of the past. Visitors often feel eyes upon them, unseen watchers tracing their movements from shadowed corners and darkened windows. The air carries faint whispers, soft but distinct, as though calling names and recounting fragments of lives long past. These murmurs drift along the streets, through empty gardens, and across broken fences, creating an auditory tapestry that is both haunting and compelling. The village itself seems to pulse with subtle life. Floorboards creak under invisible footsteps. Doors sway slightly on their hinges. And lanterns flicker without a source. Figures pace in recurring patterns, following paths that seem to have been laid out long ago. Even the wind moves differently here, carrying the scent of old wood, damp earth, and fires long extinguished, weaving together a sensory experience that is impossible to ignore. At the heart of the village, the main lane narrows, flanked by houses whose foundations groan under the passage of time. Here, the figures' movements are more noticeable, deliberate yet fleeting. They cross thresholds that no longer exist and retrace routes as if bound by memory alone. Visitors often feel compelled to follow, drawn by movement that is imperceptible yet undeniable. Soft footsteps echo behind them, sometimes merging with the whispers that call their names, creating a disorienting sense of presence. Shadows stretch unnaturally across walls and alleyways, forming shapes that suggest motion just beyond perception. Lanterns flare to life, illuminating the brief outline of a figure before fading into darkness. Each step taken by a visitor seems mirrored by subtle shifts in sound and light, reinforcing the sense that the village itself is aware of their presence. Through the night, the village continues its quiet rhythm. Figures move along streets and alleyways, pausing at thresholds, retracing paths, and wandering between houses. Whispers rise and fall, calling out across yards and corridors. The play of shadow and flickering light heightens the sense of unreality, leaving an impression of a village caught between past and present. Floorboards groan under unseen weight, shutters rattle, and distant doors swing open for no visible reason. Visitors may walk its streets, but they are never truly alone, enveloped in a presence that is invisible yet deeply tangible. As dawn approaches, the village begins to settle once more. Figures retreat into shadows, whispers fade, and the echo of footsteps disappears. Whispers fade, and the echo of footsteps disappears. Yet the feeling of life persists. Deadman's Hollow Village exists in a liminal space, a place where history and memory merge. Where unseen inhabitants continue to move through the streets and homes. And where the past never truly leaves. Visitors depart with a lasting impression. Windows, doorways, and flickering lanterns seem to hold fragments of motion long after they leave. Shadows linger along alleyways, and the soft echo of footsteps remains imprinted in the mind. Deadman's Hollow Village is a living memory, a place where past tragedies and daily routines intertwine, replaying silently each night for those who dare to enter. Even under the light of day, traces of the night remain. Rooflines and fences bear the weight of history. Alleyways carry echoes of footsteps. The air holds an invisible residue of movement. The village endures, quietly alive in ways that defy explanation. Inviting visitors to witness a presence that is never entirely gone. Deadman's Hollow Village is a testament to the persistence of memory. Shadows glide across empty streets, whispers float through the air. Whispers float through the air, and figures continue their silent movements through the night. Visitors may leave, yet the village remains, holding on to its past. Holding on to its past, and ensuring that the lives and events it has housed are never truly forgotten. It is a place where the boundary between the living and the remembered blurs. Leaving an indelible mark on all who wander its quiet, haunted streets. And ensuring that the lives and events it has housed are never truly forgotten. Hollow Oak Village sits in quiet isolation, a place where time seems to linger among the towering oaks that line its lanes. Their gnarled branches stretch across the streets, casting shadows that twist and writhe in ways that feel almost alive. The houses, weathered by years of wind and rain, stand silently along the cobblestone streets, their facades marked by peeling paint and moss-covered roofs. Visitors entering the village sense an immediate stillness, a heaviness in the air that presses gently against the senses, as though the land itself remembers lives long gone. Figures appear along the narrow lanes, pacing with measured steps. At first, they are glimpsed from the corner of the eye, fleeting shapes that vanish when looked at directly. Some linger at doorways, others emerge near alleyways, their movements slow and deliberate. They do not speak, yet their presence is undeniable. Visitors often feel watched, accompanied by the faint echo of footsteps that mirror their own. As if the village itself is guiding or observing every movement. Every shadow, every shift in the wind, carries a whisper of the past. The architecture of Hollow Oak Village adds to its mysterious atmosphere. Wooden beams creak under unseen pressure. And narrow staircases wind upward into empty attics. Windows are cracked or boarded, doors left slightly ajar, as if the villagers departed in a hurry or were never meant to leave. Even in daylight, the shadows beneath the oak stretch unnaturally, moving across walls and streets, suggesting figures that might appear at any moment. At night, the village becomes a tapestry of shifting shapes and sounds, where shadows move independently and faint murmurs drift through the air. Where shadows move independently and faint murmurs drift through the air. Walking through the village, visitors notice subtle details of lives interrupted. Objects lie scattered along paths and in yards, remnants of daily routines paused indefinitely. Figures can be seen crouching near corners or standing silently at the edge of a street. Their forms are indistinct, sometimes seeming more like shadow than human, yet they are persistent. Murmurs float through the lanes, sometimes a faint echo of conversation, sometimes a soft sigh carried by the wind. Footsteps resonate along empty cobblestones, following visitors in irregular rhythms that unsettle without alarm. The village center forms a quiet gathering of narrow streets and small open spaces. Old oak trees grow close together, their roots breaking through the ground and twisting among the cobblestones. Figures appear intermittently beneath the branches, pacing slowly or standing motionless as if observing everything around them. The wind carries a constant layering of sound, the creak of wood, the shuffle of unseen steps, and faint murmurs that seem almost like voices. Visitors feel the weight of absence in every corner, the impression of lives that once filled the space and the shadows that continue to linger. At dusk, Hollow Oak Village transforms into a realm where the senses are heightened. The fading light stretches shadows along streets and rooftops, giving the impression of movement where none exists. Figures appear more frequently, pacing along lanes or lingering at doorways, their presence simultaneously threatening and distant. The murmurs grow slightly more pronounced, drifting through the empty spaces, brushing against ears like soft, indistinct voices. Every footstep along the worn path seems amplified, echoing off walls and among the trees, creating a rhythm that feels both natural and uncanny. Visitors often experience the sensation of being accompanied, of unseen eyes following their progress along the village streets. Shadows twist in response to movement, stretching across walls and streets in a subtle dance. Each sound of the creak of wood, the whisper of wind through leaves, the soft tap of footsteps adds to an immersive atmosphere that feels alive yet suspended in time. The village is a space where memory and presence intertwine, where every corner holds the echo of a life once lived. The layering of sound and shadow throughout Hollow Oak Village is deliberate and pervasive. Figures pacing silently along streets, the faint creak of aged wood, and the murmurs carried on the wind create an environment that is both unsettling and compelling. The faint creak of aged wood and the murmurs carried on the wind create an environment that is both unsettling and compelling. Shadows shift across doorways and alleyways, creating shapes that are never fully seen yet always sensed. Murmurs rise and fall like the pulse of the village itself. A living memory that persists in every lane. As visitors leave Hollow Oak Village, the experience lingers. The faint sound of footsteps behind them. The shifting shadows among the oaks. And the soft echoes of murmurs carry beyond the boundaries of the streets. The village maintains a presence that is both invisible and profoundly felt. A record of absence that remains tangible in the senses. Hollow Oak Village is more than a collection of houses and trees. It is a place where history and memory inhabit the streets, where shadows and where the experience of presence and absence becomes inseparable. Black Pine Village sits tucked between dense stands of pine, a settlement where the trees themselves seem to watch over every road and pathway. The air carries a weight that is difficult to define, thick with the scent of pine and the faint, lingering echo of lives long past. Shadows stretch across the streets, deep and moving as though they possess their own will, brushing against the edges of perception and leaving a chill in their wake. Figures appear between shadows, half seen at the corners of vision. They do not announce themselves with sound or sudden motion. Instead, they glide along narrow roads and cobbled pathways. Observers feel their presence as a subtle pressure. A sensation of awareness that seems to follow, yet never fully engages. Visitors often report the sensation of cold fingers brushing their arms, a touch that is fleeting but unmistakable. It is not painful or aggressive, but it leaves a lasting impression, a shiver that moves along the spine. And reminds all who wander that Black Pine Village is inhabited by more than the living. The village exudes a quiet rhythm. Wind moves through the trees in deliberate patterns, carrying the creak of old timber and the whisper of pine needles. Doors and windows are weathered, some broken, revealing the remnants of interior spaces that tell stories of those who once lived here. Every detail, from the leaning fence posts to the cracked cobblestones, contributes to a subtle narrative that unfolds in the mind of the observer. Time behaves differently in Black Pine Village. Walking along a single road can feel both brief and interminable. As shadows lengthen and shift with no clear source. Corners seem to bend slightly, houses appear closer or farther than they should. And the village imposes a rhythm of its own. Drawing attention to every subtle sound, every movement in the periphery. Every movement in the periphery. The figures that inhabit the village often linger near traces of past life. A forgotten bench, a rusted tool. The remnants of a lanterna all become points of focus for these presences. They move with purpose, as though maintaining the memory of these objects. And in doing so, they create an atmosphere where the past and present coexist. Shadows in Black Pine Village are never still. The presence of these forms is unsettling but also captivating. Forcing a heightened awareness of every step, every glance, every sound. Even silence in Black Pine Village carries meaning. The absence of human activity is filled with the whisper of pine. The distant creak of timber. And the faint echo of footsteps that cannot be located. The air seems charged, a living presence that interacts with those who enter. Guiding perception and amplifying the sense of being observed. The village preserves memory in tangible ways. Each building, fence, and pathway holds traces of what was. And the figures that glide among the shadows appear to act as custodians of these traces. Observers can feel the weight of history in every movement. Every glance, every flicker of light across a broken window. The presence of the past is never violent, but it is persistent, demanding acknowledgement. Night transforms the village further. Shadows lengthen. The wind carries whispers through the trees. And the figures become more distinct in the faint light of the moon. Shapes appear at doorways and along streets. Pale eyes watching silently. Lanterns are unnecessary. The village generates its own presence. Revealing just enough to unsettle and fascinate. Visitors quickly become aware of their own position within this environment. The touch of cold air along the neck, the sensation of a glance from an unseen figure. And the movement of shadows all combine to create a heightened consciousness. Every element in the village contributes to a sense of immersion. A feeling that the visitor is moving through a space alive with memory. Presence, and subtle energy. And subtle energy. The visitor is moving through a space alive with memory, presence, and subtle energy. The streets and houses of Black Pine Village form a narrative that is continuous and layered. Each step taken, each corner rounded, adds to a story that exists in shadow, fog, and perception. Visitors are participants as well as observers, drawn into the rhythm and presence of a village that defies ordinary understanding. Even in stillness, Black Pine Village is active. The wind shifts, shadows move, and figures glide silently along roads. The village maintains a quiet vigilance, a watchful presence that does not interfere directly, yet ensures that all who enter are aware of its enduring memory. Departing the village, visitors carry more than recollection. They leave with an awareness of being observed, of having shared space with presences beyond the living. The memory of cold fingers, shifting shadows, and pale eyes persists, a reminder that the village itself endures, alive in subtle ways that cannot be ignored. Black Pine Village is a place where the ordinary and the extraordinary coexist. The roads, the trees, the shadows, and the figures all contribute to an atmosphere that is both haunting and captivating. Those who enter become acutely aware that even in places seemingly abandoned, presence, memory, and energy persist, quietly shaping perception and leaving an indelible mark on all who traverse its streets. Time spent in Black Pine Village is never ordinary. The movement of figures, the shifting of shadows, and the stillness of old buildings create a narrative that unfolds slowly and deliberately. Visitors are drawn into a world where memory, presence, and perception converge, and where the ordinary cannot exist without the extraordinary accompanying it. Every corner, every road, every tree in Black Pine Village is imbued with story. Figures glide, shadows stretch independently. And shadows stretch independently. And visitors feel the brush of cold presence. The village endures, preserving the subtle interplay of memory, observation, and presence, ensuring that its influence lingers long after the fog has cleared and the visitor has departed. Ghost-like village stretches across a quiet landscape, its streets lined with weathered houses. Its streets lined with weathered houses and narrow lanes that seem to fold in on themselves. Lanterns float above the streets with no hand holding them, casting a soft, eerie glow that illuminates porches, fences, and the edges of overgrown gardens. Shadows stretch and bend in the lantern light, moving as if alive, tracing the outlines of the buildings with an almost deliberate grace. Figures stand silently near porches, motionless yet undeniably present. They appear in the corners of vision, in windows, and along the edges of streets, their pale forms blending with the shifting shadows. When approached, they vanish, leaving only a sense of stillness and the faintest echo of movement. Visitors often feel a subtle brush of air, a touch on the shoulder, or the impression of eyes following them as they walk through the village. The atmosphere is thick with quiet tension. Doors open and close without wind. Floorboards creak in empty houses. The occasional whisper drifts along the narrow lanes. Lanterns float along, illuminating spaces where nothing visible exists. Each movement of light and shadow seems purposeful, drawing attention to certain places while concealing others. Every corner, porch, and window seems to hold a story. A memory lingering in the air like a soft hum of the past. Buildings in Ghostlight Village are remnants of lives once lived. Wooden homes lean slightly, their paint peeling, windows cracked or boarded. Porches sag under the weight of time, yet retain a sense of dignity. Barns and small shops stand abandoned, yet exude a presence that feels deliberate and aware. The village itself seems to breathe, its heartbeat faint but perceptible to those who walk its streets with attention. The streets wind unpredictably. A straight lane may curve, leading visitors deeper into the village, while shadows guide perception, hinting at movement where none exists. The effect is subtle but undeniable. The experience is immersive, as if the village is both witness and participant in every step taken. As if the village is both witness and participant in every step taken. As if the village is both witness and participant in every step taken. The experience is immersive, as if the village is both witness and participant in every step taken. The experience is immersive, as if the village is both witness and participant in every step taken. The experience is immersive, as if the village is both witness and participant in every step taken. The experience is immersive, as if the village is both witness and participant in every step taken. The experience is immersive, as if the village is both witness and participant in every step taken. The experience is immersive, as if the village is both witness and participant in every step taken. The experience is immersive, as if the village is both witness and participant in every step taken. The experience is immersive, as if the village is both witness and participant in every step taken. The experience is immersive, as if the village is both witness and participant in every step taken. The experience is immersive, as if the village is both witness and participant in every step taken. The experience is immersive, as if the village is both witness and participant in every step taken. The experience is immersive, as if the village is both witness and participant in every step taken. The experience is immersive, as if the village is both witness and participant in every step taken. Sounds are sparse but haunting. Footsteps echo where no one walks. Faint murmurs rise from the interiors of houses. Whispered words seem to float in the air, barely perceptible yet distinctly present. Some visitors report laughter, soft and fleeting, that drifts across the streets like a breeze, carried from unseen spaces. Even the wind itself seems to carry intention, curling around corners, shifting leaves, and guiding observers along the paths. The central square of Ghostlight Village is a place of subtle power. Lanterns drift above cracked paving stones, illuminating figures that pause in the glow. Abandoned shops and homes around the square seem alive, doors moving slowly, windows reflecting shapes that disappear when approached. Shadows stretch and intertwine across the ground, creating patterns that feel deliberate. The square is both center and threshold, a place where the presence of the village is most strongly felt. Visitors sense a continuity that transcends the present. The village seems aware of each person who enters, registering their passage as part of its ongoing story. Figures appear in glimpses, pacing or standing, always present yet never fully revealed. The sensation of being watched, followed, or guided is constant, as if the village itself remembers and reacts to each observer. Shadows lengthen and lanterns drift in response to unseen rhythms, forming a tapestry of light, movement, and anticipation. The buildings and streets interact with perception in subtle ways. Moonlight highlights textures of wood, stone, and brick, enhancing the interplay of shadows and light. Figures pause in lantern glow, their forms half-formed and fleeting. Visitors feel the touch of history, the weight of memory, and the sense of presence in a place that exists on the boundary between the seen and the unseen. Each alley, porch, and doorway holds potential for encounter, observation, and reflection. Ghostlight Village is alive in its own mysterious manner. Its presence is felt in every creak of a floorboard, in every flicker of lantern light, and in every subtle movement along the streets. Visitors feel themselves part of a living narrative, guided by shadows and illuminated by ghostly light. The village watches and responds, shaping the experience of all who enter. Every journey through Ghostlight Village is unique. Some see figures more clearly, others hear whispers more distinctly. The feeling of being followed or observed is constant. And the village bends perception subtly, guiding, revealing, or hiding according to its own rhythm. Lanterns drift without hands, shadows move deliberately. And the atmosphere holds a weight that is palpable, compelling, and inescapable. Ghostlight Village endures beyond the perception of time. It is a place where memory and presence intertwine, where light and shadow create a living tableau of subtle hauntings, and where each visitor leaves marked by the experience. The village exists as both space and consciousness, alive in its quiet, immersive, and haunting manner. The experience of Ghostlight Village lingers after departure. Observers carry the sensation of being watched, followed, and remembered. Lanterns and shadows imprint on memory, figures remain present in imagination, and the village continues to exist in awareness. Every step through the streets is a step into history, perception, and the subtle interplay of the visible and the unseen. Ghostlight Village is a realm of quiet haunting, a landscape of lanterns, shadows, and fleeting figures. Streets, houses, and porches are alive with the presence of the past. Each visitor becomes part of the village's ongoing story, aware that light and shadow, presence and memory, continue beyond the bounds of ordinary experience. The village endures, silent yet alive, an immersive and atmospheric testament to the intersection of history, perception, and the unknown. Ashwood Village rests quietly in a secluded valley, its homes and streets weathered by time and the seasons. By day, the village appears still, frozen in silence. Windows are dark, doors closed, and the streets empty, giving the impression of abandonment. Yet beneath this apparent stillness, there is a pulse, a subtle undercurrent that hints at the life lingering within the shadows. When night falls, Ashwood Village transforms. Figures appear and vanish, moving with deliberate purpose between homes and along the narrow lanes. Lanterns flare unexpectedly, casting brief light across cracked cobblestones and worn paths. These flickers reveal glimpses of movement that vanish as quickly as they are seen, leaving visitors with the unsettling feeling of being observed by unseen presences. The village is alive with sound. Soft footsteps echo across empty yards and alleyways. Floorboards creak under invisible weight, shutters rattle, and doors swing slightly on their hinges. Every sound seems purposeful, as though echoing routines from long ago. Whispers drift through the air, faint but distinct, calling out names or repeating fragments of conversations. Visitors often feel drawn into this rhythm, compelled to follow paths that have been walked before, guided by sounds that cannot be traced. In the center of Ashwood Village, the main lane narrows, flanked by homes that sag under years of neglect. Figures retrace steps along the street, pausing at doorways or peering from windows that have long ceased to function. Lanterns flicker along the route, casting pale light on faces or shadows that do not belong to anyone present. The effect is both haunting and mesmerizing, a choreography of memory and presence that feels entirely natural yet wholly unreal. As night deepens, the village seems to breathe. Soft whispers rise from gardens and courtyards, carrying across rooftops and through narrow passageways. Figures pace, disappear, and reappear, moving along paths long etched into the fabric of the village. Each step, each sound, is a subtle reminder of the lives that once filled these spaces. Even the wind seems altered here, carrying scents of damp wood, aged stone, and faint smoke from fires long extinguished, enveloping visitors in an invisible narrative of history and presence. Lanterns continue to flare across streets, highlighting glimpses of movement, before fading back into darkness. Shadows shift and stretch, sometimes forming the outlines of figures moving just out of reach. Visitors report seeing shapes crossing alleyways or appearing momentarily in doorways before vanishing. The village itself seems to guide these appearances, orchestrating each movement and whisper with precision, creating a continuous, living story of the past. The outskirts of Ashwood Village carry their own subtle presence. Empty yards and gardens echo with faint footsteps, shadows slip between trees and fences, and whispers drift from abandoned porches. Each sound, each flicker of movement, contributes to the sense that the village is inhabited not by the living, but by memory itself. Visitors cannot see the source of these presences, yet they feel acutely aware of them, an invisible energy guiding their senses. An invisible energy guiding their senses. Through the night, the village maintains a rhythm that is at once calm and tense. Figures pace the streets and alleys, lanterns flare and fade, and whispers echo, calling out across yards and empty homes. Shadows glide along walls, retracing paths once traveled by those who lived and worked here. Every step and sound is part of a continuous, subtle performance, a reminder that Ashwood Village is alive in ways that defy ordinary understanding. As dawn approaches, the activity gradually subsides. Figures retreat into shadows, whispers fade, and footsteps vanish. Windows, doorways, and alleyways retain traces of movement. Shadows continue to cling to walls. And the atmosphere remains heavy with memory. Visitors leave the village with the sense that Ashwood Village has imprinted itself upon them. An indelible reminder of its unseen life. Even under the light of day, remnants of the night remain. Rooflines and fences bear the weight of history. Alleyways echo with memory. And the air holds a faint, invisible presence. Ashwood Village exists in a state between past and present, where shadows and whispers maintain the stories of those who came before. Visitors may depart, but the village continues, quietly alive, ensuring that its memories and presences are never truly gone. Visitors may depart, but the village continues, quietly alive, ensuring that its memories and presences are never truly gone. Ashwood Village is a place where time feels suspended. Shadows glide along streets, whispers drift across empty yards. And unseen figures continue their movements throughout the night. It is a village where the past persists, where memory and presence intertwine, and where visitors are left with the haunting, beautiful sense of having witnessed a living story, replayed silently in the quiet of night. Widowmaker Village lies in isolation, a place where time seems frozen and shadows linger in ways that defy explanation. Its streets are lined with weathered houses, their paint faded and windows dark, yet the village feels alive in an unsettling way. The air is heavy with stillness, carrying a quiet tension that presses gently on visitors. Every lane, every alley, holds the echo of lives once lived, and the absence of the villagers is felt as profoundly as their presence once was. Figures appear suddenly along the streets. At first, they are glimpsed only from the corner of the eye. Fleeting shapes that vanish when looked at directly. Some linger near doorways. Others pace the alleys slowly. Their movements are deliberate. They do not speak. Yet their presence is undeniable. Visitors feel watched, followed by an unseen rhythm of footsteps that mirror their own. Shadows twist along walls and streets, sometimes forming humanoid shapes, sometimes simply shifting with the wind, but always creating a sense of being observed. The architecture of Widowmaker Village contributes to its haunting atmosphere. Narrow cobblestone streets wind between small homes and abandoned shops. Wooden porches sag under the weight of years. Doorways are often left ajar, inviting curiosity but revealing nothing. The houses seem to breathe with the memory of their former occupants, holding a presence that is both tangible and ghostly. Even in daylight, the shadows of trees stretch unnaturally across streets. At night, the village transforms completely, every shadow and sound becoming amplified, every corner a potential encounter with the unseen. Visitors notice subtle signs of interrupted lives. Personal items lie scattered across pathways. Chairs sit empty on porches. And toys remain in yards as though their owners might return at any moment. Figures crouch near corners or watch silently from darkened doorways. Murmurs float through the streets, sometimes resembling speech, other times just the faintest echo of sound carried by the wind. Footsteps echo across cobblestones in irregular patterns, creating a rhythm that feels both familiar and unsettling. Each sound is amplified by the quiet, giving the impression that the village itself is alive and aware of those who wander its streets. The village square forms a focal point of quiet tension. Streets converge around a small, abandoned fountain, its stone worn smooth with age. Willow trees surround the square, their long branches brushing against windows and doors, casting shadows that move independently of the wind. Figures appear intermittently beneath these trees, pacing slowly or standing motionless, observing. The wind carries a mix of sounds, creaking wood, shifting leaves, faint murmurs, and distant cries. Every sound feels purposeful, as if the village communicates through echoes and shadows rather than voices. As dusk falls, Widowmaker Village changes further. The last light stretches long shadows across streets and buildings, and figures become more pronounced, pacing or lingering in the corners of vision. Murmurs rise slightly, drifting through the alleys and empty homes, brushing against ears like soft, indistinct voices. Footsteps follow in unpredictable patterns, sometimes mimicking visitors, sometimes moving independently. Every detail of the sway of a tree branch, the creak of a gate, the faint shuffle of movementa adds to the immersive tension that fills the village. Visitors often sense they are not alone, that unseen eyes track their movements through the winding lanes. Shadows twist and stretch in response to every step. Figures appear in peripheral vision, vanish when approached, then reappear elsewhere. Each creak of a floorboard, each whisper carried by the wind, reinforces the sense that the village itself remembers. Time feels suspended, and the boundary between presence and absence blurs, creating an environment where history and memory coexist with the living moment. History and memory coexist with the living moment. The layering of sound, shadow, and subtle movement defines the atmosphere of Widowmaker Village. Figures pacing silently, faint murmurs drifting through empty streets, and the echo of footsteps create a living memory. Shadows form shapes that are never fully realized, and the sounds of the village pulse with a rhythm of their own. Every lane and alley seems imbued with the presence of those who vanished, a continuous record of absence made manifest through movement and sound. A living memory that persists long after the villagers disappeared. As night deepens, the village exerts its quiet influence. Figures linger along streets, shadows stretch unnaturally across windows and porches. And faint murmurs drift between buildings. Footsteps echo in the dark. And soft cries seem to rise from nowhere yet everywhere at once. Widowmaker Village is more than a collection of streets and houses. Where shadows and sounds preserve what has been lost. And where every visitor becomes aware of the thin line between the seen and the unseen. By the time visitors leave, the impressions of Widowmaker Village remain. The echoes of footsteps and murmurs follow them beyond the streets. And the memory of shifting shadows lingers in the mind. The village holds its history tightly, an invisible presence woven into every lane, every porch, every darkened window. Figures may no longer walk its streets in life, but their essence persists, a spectral imprint that blends with the environment. A spectral imprint that blends with the environment. The village holds its history tightly, an invisible presence woven into every lane, every porch, every darkened window. Widowmaker Village exists simultaneously in the past and present, a place where the echoes of disappearance are felt as clearly as any living presence, leaving a haunting, unforgettable impression on all who pass through. Misty Pines Village rests beneath a thick canopy of pine trees, a place where fog drifts slowly across the streets and houses, curling through the spaces between chimneys and rooflines. The village exudes a quiet presence, a stillness that feels alive, charged with the memory of countless footsteps that have passed through its narrow lanes. Shadows linger at the edges of perception, moving with a deliberate subtlety that hints at lives unseen yet ever present. Figures glide silently along the lanes, their forms faint and indistinct, yet undeniably there. They move without sound, without urgency, as if bound to the rhythm of the village itself. Observers sense these movements not as sudden disturbances but as a continuous awareness that follows, brushes against, and surrounds them. There is a calm to their presence, a deliberate pacing that heightens the senses, making every creak of timber, every whisper of wind, more pronounced and meaningful. Visitors often report the sensation of unseen hands brushing against their arms. It is not an aggressive touch, but a fleeting awareness that travels along the skin, leaving a shiver in its wake. The touch is gentle and insistent, a reminder that the village is never truly empty, and that the past and present coexist in quiet tension. Every corner of Misty Pines Village seems to hold this same quiet energy, a persistent presence that watches, waits, and moves alongside the living. The architecture of the village tells a story in itself. Weathered wood, stone paths worn smooth by time, and buildings leaning slightly with age all speak of a history preserved not only in material but in spirit. Each element becomes part of the narrative, a stage for the subtle movements of the figures that inhabit the village unseen. Shadows in Misty Pines village are restless. They detach from walls, slither along paths, and twist across rooftops with an independence that defies the source of light. Observers cannot predict their movements, and the shadows themselves seem to react to the presence of the living, altering their shapes and trajectories in ways that are both unsettling and captivating. The village feels alive in every sense, an organism composed of wood, fog, and presence, each layer interacting with those who enter its lanes. The sounds of the village are equally telling. Even in silence, there is a subtle hum, a layering of wind through pine. The distant drip of water. And the occasional echo of a footstep that cannot be traced. These sounds mingle with the movements of the unseen figures, creating an atmosphere where the ordinary becomes extraordinary. Visitors quickly become aware that every motion, every whisper of sound, carries significance, drawing attention to details that might otherwise be overlooked. Time behaves differently in Misty Pines village. Walking down a single lane can feel both fleeting and endless. The fog shifts slowly, revealing glimpses of figures only to obscure them again moments later. Corners seem to bend, houses appear closer or farther than expected. The village imposes its own rhythm upon those who traverse it. It is a place where memory, perception, and presence converge, shaping an experience that is immersive, unsettling, and unforgettable. The figures that glide along the lanes often linger near traces of life. A broken bench, a rusted tool, a forgotten lanterna all become points of focus, as if the figures are guarding memories, preserving remnants of lives once lived. Their movements are deliberate, flowing from one object to another, tracing paths that are meaningful yet invisible to the untrained eye. Observers sense these presences in subtle ways, a shift of the fog, a brushing of air, a momentary reflection in a window. Night enhances the village's peculiar vitality. The fog thickens, shadows lengthen, and the figures become more distinct in the dim moonlight. Eyes, pale and unblinking, appear in windows, on rooftops, and behind fences. The village seems to generate its own light and awareness, revealing just enough to unsettle and engage the senses. Visitors quickly learn to navigate with heightened awareness. Every step, every glance, and every sound becomes significant. The sensation of unseen hands, the movement of shadows, and the presence of pale eyes create a layering of experience that is both immersive and disorienting. The village does not startle with sudden events but envelopes slowly, drawing observers into its quiet, persistent rhythm. Misty Pines village preserves memory in tangible ways. Each building, each street, and each tree holds traces of the past. And the figures that glide through the fog seem to act as custodians of these memories. The living are allowed to observe, to sense, and to feel, but not to interfere. The village maintains a delicate balance, where the past coexists with the present. And presence is both subtle and pervasive. Even in stillness, the village is active, creating an experience that is both continuous and layered. Visitors cannot separate the living from the presence of what has passed. Every step carries a sense of history. And every movement is marked by the enduring awareness of the village itself. Departing Misty Pines village leaves a lingering impression. Visitors carry with them the memory of cold touches, shifting shadows, and pale eyes. The village's presence endures beyond physical departure, leaving an imprint on memory and perception. The fog, the figures, and the quiet energy of the streets. A place where the ordinary and extraordinary coexist. Misty Pines village is a world unto itself. Trees, fog, shadows, and figures all contribute to an immersive atmosphere that is both haunting and captivating. Visitors emerge forever aware that even in places that appear empty, Lithia of a different kind persists, quietly shaping every experience and leaving traces that linger long after the last step has been taken. The Village's stories are not told in words but in presence and perception. Every path, every building, and every shadow is part of a narrative that unfolds slowly and deliberately. Figures glide, hands brush, and eyes watch silently, creating a world where memory, awareness, and observation converge. Misty Pines Village endures, alive in the fog, in the shadows, and in the subtle impressions it leaves on every visitor. Backroad Village stretches quietly across the landscape, its homes appearing black under the pale glow of moonlight. The wooden structures, some leaning with age, others remarkably intact, line narrow lanes and open courtyards. Shadows cling to the walls and rooftops, moving gently as if breathing, and each creaking board and subtle shift in the night feels alive. Figures emerge briefly from the darkened corners of the village, their forms half seen, standing along porches, pacing alleys, or lingering near shuttered windows. They vanish as quickly as they appear, leaving a lingering sense of being watched. Visitors walking through the village often feel an unseen presence brushing their shoulders, or sense eyes following them along the empty lanes. The atmosphere of Backroad Village is heavy with quiet tension. Doors open and close with no wind. Floorboards creak under invisible weight. And faint whispers drift through the streets. Lanterns, seemingly without source, glow softly in windows or hover near doorways, casting eerie light that illuminates both the familiar and the strange. Each corner, each path, seems to hold memory, as if the village itself remembers the lives once lived here, and the secrets buried in its soil. The village layout is irregular. Narrow lanes twist and turn, leading visitors deeper into the settlement, while open courtyards reveal abandoned wells, overgrown gardens, and rusted iron fences. The effect is disorienting yet mesmerizing. Lanterns drift along these lanes, guiding attention and shaping perception. Shadows extend unnaturally, merging with the forms of the houses, and sometimes with the glimpses of figures, creating a tapestry of light and dark that shifts with every step. Backroad Village is not silent. Subtle sounds permeate the night air. A soft thump from a distant attic, or the faint murmur of chanting carried on the wind. These sounds are irregular, fleeting, and impossible to trace. They rise and fade as if the village itself breathes, creating a haunting rhythm that draws visitors forward while reminding them that they are never alone. The homes and barns are varied in their structure. Some are modest cottages with thatched roofs, others larger homes with steep gables. Windows reflect shapes that vanish when approached, and porches seem to sag with the weight of unseen presences. Courtyards and gardens are overgrown, yet meticulously shaped by hands no longer present. The village feels lived in, even as it stands abandoned. Visitors report encounters with figures that seem real yet intangible. Pale faces appear briefly in windows or through mist rising from the earth, only to dissolve moments later. Figures pause on porches, step lightly along alleys, or lean near the edges of shadows, as if observing, testing, or guiding those who enter. The sensation of being followed or watched is constant, and the village seems to adjust subtly to the presence of each observer. Lanterns play a central role in the village's atmosphere. Floating or glowing in windows, they illuminate details both inviting and unsettling. They drift silently, sometimes ahead of visitors, sometimes behind, as though leading or monitoring them. The light they cast dances across walls and ground, highlighting textures of wood, stone, and iron while leaving other areas in deep shadow. Every flicker and movement feels deliberate, as though the village communicates through its light and dark. The central square of Backroad village is a place of quiet intensity. Abandoned shops, small wells, and open courtyards form an intimate space, where shadows gather and lanterns drift with purpose. Figures appear more often here, pacing, pausing, or standing still. The square seems to act as a focal point, amplifying the subtle sounds of whispering wind, distant footsteps, and chanting that rises and falls with the night. Every street and building interacts with perception. Moonlight highlights textures, lanterns illuminate corners, and shadows stretch unnaturally. Figures vanish and reappear, blending with the environment. Visitors feel the weight of the past, the presence of memories, and a sense that the village itself is alive in a way beyond ordinary understanding. Every step taken is a step through history, presence, and lingering consciousness. The village itself seems aware of those who enter. Movement, light, and sound respond subtly to observers, creating an immersive experience where the boundary between real and imagined is blurred. The environment is interactive in a subtle, haunting manner, compelling visitors to move, observe, and reflect. Figures pause in ways that feel deliberate, compelling visitors to move, observe, and reflect. Backroad village endures beyond the night. Its presence lingers in memory, in the way shadows shift in Oni's mind, in the quiet sensation of being watched, and in the echo of chants carried on the wind. The village is alive in a silent, immersive, and atmospheric way, offering a haunting testament to memory, perception, and presence. Visitors leave changed. The weight of Backroad village lingers. The sensation of unseen eyes and whispering wind persists. And lanterns continue to drift in imagination long after the streets are behind them. Every path, every shadow, and every fleeting figure becomes part of the ongoing story. A tale that exists in quiet, deliberate haunting, and in the continuity of the village's spectral life. Where shadows glide silently, figures emerge and vanish, and chanting drifts on the wind. Streets, homes, and courtyards remain alive with subtle interactions. Lanterns illuminate spaces both inviting and unsettling. Shadows dance across walls and floors, a testament to the village's sentience. The village endures, silent yet sentient, immersive yet intangible, a living, breathing testament to the intersection of the seen, the unseen, and the remembered. Hollowbrook village lies quietly in a secluded valley, its narrow lanes bordered by homes weathered by time. A small creek winds through part of the village, its waters murmuring softly, reflecting the moonlight and casting ripples across stone bridges. By day, the village appears abandoned, silent, and still. Windows remain dark, doors closed, and the streets empty. Yet there is an undercurrent of life, subtle and persistent, that becomes apparent as the day fades into night. When darkness settles, Hollowbrook village awakens in a manner that defies ordinary perception. Shadows move along the narrow lanes, slipping between walls, fences, and buildings. Figures appear and vanish, gliding along paths once walked by villagers long gone. Lanterns flare unexpectedly, casting brief illumination across cobblestones and wooden porches. These sudden bursts of light reveal movement just long enough to spark the imagination, before fading back into the encompassing darkness. The village is alive with sound. Footsteps echo across empty streets. Floorboards creak under invisible weight. And doors and shutters move as though disturbed by unseen hands. Whispered voices drift on the wind. Faint but distinct, calling out names or repeating fragments of conversations from the past. Visitors often feel drawn to these sounds, compelled to follow invisible pathways that seem to have been etched into the village over centuries. At the heart of Hollowbrook village, the main lane narrows, flanked by homes that lean with age. Figures pace these streets, appearing momentarily in doorways or under windows, then vanishing before they can be fully seen. Lanterns flicker along these routes, illuminating faces or shadows that do not belong to any living presence. The village orchestrates these movements with subtle precision, creating a haunting but mesmerizing tableau of memory and presence. Alongside the creek, the atmosphere is especially vivid. Figures move along the banks, their footsteps sounding on wooden bridges where no one stands. The water reflects the flickering lanterns, multiplying the shadows that glide along the banks and weaving an intricate pattern of light and dark. Whispers rise from the creek, soft and undulating, as though the water itself carries the memories of those who once lived and walked here. The outskirts of the village are equally alive. Empty yards, overgrown gardens, and abandoned porches echo with soft footsteps. Shadows slip between trees and fences, appearing and disappearing with a fluidity that defies the eye. Every sound, every flicker of movement, reinforces the sense that Hollowbrook Village is inhabited not by the living but by memory itself. Visitors may not see the sources of these presences, but they feel acutely aware of them, sensing the unseen energy that moves with purpose throughout the village. As the night deepens, Hollowbrook Village maintains a steady rhythm. Figures continue to pace lanes, lanterns flare and fade, and whispers rise and fall across yards and alleyways. Dawn brings a gradual retreat of this activity. Figures vanish into shadows, footsteps fade, and whispers disappear. Yet the impression of life lingers. Doorways, windows, and lanes retain traces of movement. Shadows cling to walls, and the air remains thick with the sense of history and memory. Visitors depart with the feeling that the village has left an indelible mark. A reminder of its silent, persistent presence. Even in daylight, the traces of the night remain. Rooflines and fences hold the weight of memory. Alleyways echo with sound. And the gentle flow of the creek continues to reflect shadows that are no longer there. Hollowbrook Village exists between the past and the present, where memory and presence intertwine. And the stories of those who once lived here persist in subtle, almost imperceptible ways. Hollowbrook Village is a place where time feels suspended. Shadows glide along lanes. Whispers drift across empty yards. And unseen figures continue their movements throughout the night. The village is alive in ways that cannot be fully understood. A living tapestry of memory and presence. Visitors leave carrying the impression of a place that exists beyond ordinary reality. Where every shadow, sound, and movement tells a story that continues to unfold silently in the quiet of night. Blood Willow Village rests in an isolated valley, where the streets are lined with willow trees. Where the long branches sway unnaturally, even when the air is still. The village seems frozen in time, its houses weathered and abandoned. Yet it exudes a presence that is hard to ignore. Every street and alley is imbued with a quiet tension. As if unseen eyes watch the movements of those who dare to wander through. The absence of the villagers is palpable, yet the sense of Lithia or what once was Lithia lingers in every shadow. Figures appear near porches and along pathways. At first, they are glimpsed only peripherally, crouched in corners or lingering in shadow. Their presence is subtle, a shift in the air or the movement of a shape that vanishes when directly observed. Visitors feel the weight of being watched, footsteps echoing in tandem with their own. Shadows stretch unnaturally along walls, contorting and shifting, as if alive. These fleeting forms move slowly, deliberately, pacing the streets in ways that suggest awareness and intention, a silent record of those who once inhabited the village. The architecture of Blood Willow Village adds to its haunting aura. Narrow streets wind between modest homes, their paint faded and wood rotting with age. Porches sag under the weight of years, and windows remain dark, yet the houses seem alive with memory. Cobblestone paths echo with every step. Even in the daylight, shadows stretch unnaturally across streets and yards. Moving with a rhythm that does not always follow the sun. At night, the village transforms into a place of heightened tension, where every creak, rustle, and whisper becomes amplified, revealing the presence of something unseen. Visitors notice subtle signs of interrupted lives. Personal belongings lie scattered near doorways. Chairs remain in disuse on porches. And toys sit abandoned in yards. Figures crouch near corners, watching silently from shadows. Soft murmurs drift through the streets. Sometimes indistinct and other times resembling speech. Footsteps echo across cobblestones. Moving in unpredictable patterns, at once following visitors and moving independently. Every detail of the sway of a branch, the creak of a floorboard, the faint shift of a shadowy serves to immerse those who enter into the village's atmosphere. The village square, though small, is the center of lingering energy. Here, streets converge around an old, dry fountain. Willow trees bend over the square, their long branches brushing against windows and doors, casting moving shadows. The wind carries a mix of sound, soft creaks, the shifting of leaves, faint murmurs, and distant, haunting laughter. Every sound seems purposeful, as though the village itself communicates through echoes, shadows, and movement rather than voices. As dusk falls, Blood Willow Village changes further. The last rays of sunlight stretch shadows long across the streets and buildings. And figures become more pronounced, pacing or lingering in corners. Murmurs rise slightly, drifting between houses and along alleyways. Brushing past ears like the memory of speech. Footsteps echo unpredictably, sometimes mimicking those of visitors, sometimes moving independently. Every sway of a tree, every shift in shadow, every subtle sound adds to the sense that the village exists as a living memory. A place where absence and presence are inseparably intertwined. Visitors often feel they are not alone. The atmosphere is thick with observation, shadows twisting and stretching with their movement. Figures appear in peripheral vision, vanish when approached, and reappear elsewhere. Every creak of wood, every faint whisper carried by the wind, reinforces the sense that the village remembers. Time feels suspended, and the boundary between presence and absence blurs, creating an environment where memory and reality coexist. The layering of shadow, sound, and movement defines the haunting quality of Blood Willow Village. Figures pacing silently, faint whispers drifting through streets. And footsteps echoing in empty lanes combine to form a living memory. Shadows form shapes never fully realized. And every sound pulses with a rhythm of its own. Each street and alley carries the imprint of those who vanished, their absence made manifest through movement, sound, and lingering presence. As night deepens, the village exerts its full influence. Figures linger along streets, shadows stretch unnaturally along porches. And whispers float between houses. Visitors feel the weight of absence, a presence without form yet unmistakably real. Footsteps echo in the dark. And soft laughter seems to rise from nowhere yet from every corner. Blood Willow Village is more than an abandoned settlement. It is a place where memory inhabits space. Where shadows and sounds preserve what has been lost. And where every visitor becomes keenly aware of the thin line between the living and the spectral. When visitors leave, the impression of Blood Willow Village remains. The echoes of footsteps and whispers follow them. And the memory of shifting shadows lingers. The village keeps its history close. An invisible presence woven into every street. Every porch. Every darkened window. Though the villagers have vanished, their essence persists. A spectral imprint blending with the environment. Blood Willow Village exists simultaneously in the past and present. Where the echoes of absence are as vivid as any living presence. Leaving a haunting, unforgettable impression on all who walk its streets. Phantom Creek Village rests beneath a shroud of fog that winds through its streets, curling between the outlines of weathered buildings and the occasional gnarled tree. Lanterns light the lanes with no visible source, casting a pale, otherworldly glow that reveals worn cobblestones and cracked windows while leaving other areas shrouded in shadow. The village seems alive in subtle ways, as if each corner, each alley, and every leaning structure carries a memory and a presence beyond the visible. Figures rise along the lanes, appearing without sound, moving with deliberate, quiet steps. Their forms are indistinct yet undeniably there, gliding past houses, around street corners, and near abandoned carts. Observers sense their movement not as a threat but as a persistent awareness that seems to follow them along the streets. There is a rhythm to their motion, a quiet persistence that gives the lanes a pulse that is both haunting and mesmerizing. Visitors often report the sensation of cold fingers brushing against their arms. The touch is fleeting, almost imperceptible, yet it leaves a lingering chill. It is neither violent nor sudden, but a subtle reminder that Phantom Creek Village is never truly empty. The living and the unseen coexist here, sharing the same space, yet on different planes of perception. Every movement, every whisper of fog across the cobblestones, seems orchestrated to make the observer aware of the village's persistent presence. The architecture contributes to the village's eerie atmosphere. Roofs sag with age. Timber creaks under the weight of years. Walls bear cracks that reveal glimpses of shadows within. Fog drifts through doorways and windows, diffusing the glow of the lanterns, making every shape appear uncertain. Every corner seems to move. Each building is part of the narrative, acting as both stage and participant. Unfolding along the lanes. Shadows behave independently in Phantom Creek Village. Shadows twist and stretch across streets and walls, separating from their natural sources and moving in ways that defy logic. Observers cannot anticipate their motion, the shadows react to their presence, shifting and stretching in response, hinting at unseen awareness. The interplay of light and darkness creates a continuously changing tableau, one that is impossible to fully capture yet impossible to ignore. The sounds of the village are equally subtle yet unnerving. Even in apparent silence, there is a layering of whispers. The wind through the trees, the occasional drop of water, the faint scuff of a footstep on stone. These sounds mingle with the movement of the figures, heightening awareness and drawing attention to details that might otherwise be overlooked. Every creak, every whisper, every rustle becomes part of the narrative, adding texture and depth to the experience of the village. Adding texture and depth to the experience of the village. Time seems fluid in Phantom Creek Village. Walking a single street can feel both fleeting and interminable. Fog shifts slowly, revealing glimpses of figures before obscuring them again. Corners appear closer or farther than expected, alleys bend unexpectedly. And the village imposes its own rhythm on those who traverse it. Past and present coexist here, history and memory mingle with the observer's movements, creating an experience that is both immersive and disorienting. The figures are drawn to remnants of life, a broken wheelbarrow, a discarded lantern, a weathered signpost. They glide past these objects with deliberate motion, as though tracing invisible paths known only to them. Observers sense these interactions indirectly, a shift in the fog, a sudden cold, a fleeting glance from a shadow that was not there moments before. The village communicates not through words, but through presence, perception, and subtle movement. Night intensifies the village's peculiar energy. The fog thickens, shadows grow longer. And the figures become more pronounced in the lantern glow. Eyes, pale and unblinking, appear in doorways, behind windows, or at the edges of alleyways. They watch silently, their attention never threatening but ever present. The lanterns need no source, the village produces its own light and awareness, guiding observers along its lanes while keeping certain details hidden. Visitors quickly learn to navigate with heightened awareness. Every step, glance, and sound carries significance. The sensation of unseen hands, the motion of shadows, and the occasional glimpse of eyes create a layered, immersive experience. Phantom Creek Village does not startle through sudden events but envelopes slowly, quietly establishing its presence and ensuring that every observer becomes attuned to its rhythms. Memory is preserved tangibly here. Buildings, streets, and objects carry traces of lives once lived. The living are permitted to observe and feel, but not to alter the delicate balance. Awareness itself becomes the measure of experience. Even in stillness, the village is active. Fog drifts, shadows move. And figures glide along the lanes. Time folds and stretches unpredictably, creating a sense that each moment is both continuous and layered. Visitors cannot separate the living from what has passed. Every movement, every sensation, carries a weight of history and presence that lingers long after the lane has been left behind. Departing the village leaves a lasting impression. Observers carry the memory of cold touches, shifting shadows, and unblinking eyes. Phantom Creek Village endures beyond physical presence, imprinting a subtle awareness upon those who traverse its streets. Fog, figures, and shadows remain in memory, a quiet reminder that life, of a different sort, persists even in stillness. The village itself becomes a living memory. Trees, fog, lanterns, and unseen figures compose a narrative that is as immersive as it is haunting. Presence and perception converge, creating a persistent, layered atmosphere that lingers with every visitor. Phantom Creek Village is a place where the ordinary and the extraordinary exist simultaneously, where the past remains ever present, and where every lane carries the echo of stories that cannot be spoken but are impossible to ignore. Figures glide, shadows twist, and awareness persists. Phantom Creek Village is a world unto itself, alive in fog, light, and the subtle impressions it leaves on every visitor. Memory, perception, and presence combine to create an experience both haunting and unforgettable. A village that continues to exist in the spaces between sight, touch, and consciousness long after the last footstep has faded. Darkwater Village lies in the valley, shrouded in mist and moonlight, a place where time seems to pause. The village streets are narrow and winding, lined with homes whose facades have darkened with age. Shadows stretch along the walls and through the alleys, gliding silently as if carrying the weight of memories long past. The village seems alive, breathing through the whispers of wind and the subtle creak of unseen doors. Figures rise silently along the streets and alleys, appearing briefly at corners, on porches, or in the dim glow of windows. They move with an ethereal calm, pacing or pausing as if observing each step of the few who dare to wander here. The figures vanish without warning, leaving only a lingering sense of being watched. Visitors often feel a presence brushing their shoulders or a quiet sensation that they are not alone, even when the streets are empty. Ghostly lanterns float above homes, casting light that seems to have no source. Their glow illuminates textures of wood and stone, highlights the uneven paths, and stretches shadows in ways that make the familiar strange. The lanterns drift silently, sometimes guiding, sometimes following, their movement deliberate yet subtle. Every flicker and sway adds to the village's haunting rhythm, creating a sense of anticipation and tension that is impossible to ignore. Darkwater Village is filled with sound, yet no one can pinpoint its origin. Footsteps echo softly along empty lanes. Whispers rise and fall as though carried from one street to another. And faint cries seem to float on the night air. These sounds appear and vanish with no trace, leaving visitors unsettled and aware of the invisible currents that move through the village. Even the wind carries hints of chants and murmurs, creating an atmosphere that is both immersive and disorienting. The layout of the village is irregular, its paths twisting unpredictably between open squares and tightly packed homes. Narrow alleys open onto hidden courtyards, abandoned wells, and overgrown gardens. Each space is alive with presence, the environment responding subtly to those who enter. Shadows extend unnaturally, merging with the forms of the figures and the faint lantern light, creating a visual tapestry that is constantly shifting and never fully comprehensible. The homes themselves seem to hold memory. Their walls and roofs are darkened with age. Windows reflecting glimpses of figures that vanish when approached. Porches sag slightly under invisible weight. And doorways seem to exhale faint drafts without wind. Some houses are modest, others more imposing, yet all share the same silent, spectral quality that gives the village its unmistakable character. Courtyards are overgrown yet strangely maintained, as if tended by unseen hands. Visitors report fleeting encounters that defy explanation. Pale faces appear in windows, in the mist rising from the ground, or in the corners of the alleys. Figures pause momentarily, watching, before dissolving into shadow. The sensation of being followed is constant, a quiet pressure that reminds each observer that Darkwater Village is alive in its own way. Every step taken, every turn down a winding lane, deepens the feeling of immersion in a space that is both physical and spectral. Lanterns play a central role in the village's haunting presence. Their glow is steady yet fleeting, shaping perception and drawing attention to the interplay of light and dark. Shadows stretch unnaturally, merging with the forms of figures and architecture, creating scenes that feel both real and imagined. The lanterns guide the eye, heighten tension, and add an almost ritualistic rhythm to the night. The lanterns illuminate corners of courtyards, creating a sense of unease and foreboding. The central square of Darkwater Village serves as a gathering point for presence and activity. Abandoned shops, open courtyards, and narrow lanes converge here, amplifying the sounds of whispering, footsteps, and faint chanting. Figures appear more frequently in this space, pausing, pacing, or standing silently. The square acts as a focal point, intensifying the atmosphere and drawing visitors deeper into the village's enigmatic patterns. Each building, street, and alley interacts with perception. Moonlight illuminates textures of stone and wood. Figures appear and vanish, blending with the environment. Lanterns highlight corners and thresholds. And shadows shift unpredictably. The village responds subtly to observers, adjusting movement and sound. Creating an experience where reality and perception intertwine. Every moment spent in the village is both guided and unpredictable, offering an immersive and haunting encounter. The village seems sentient, responding to those who enter. Footsteps, lanterns, and shadows shift in relation to observers, creating an experience that is both compelling and unsettling. The air is filled with subtle cues, guiding visitors along paths, drawing attention to certain corners, and emphasizing the presence of the unseen. Darkwater Village is interactive, not through overt action, but through the immersive and deliberate orchestration of environment, light, and sound. Visitors leave with the weight of the village lingering in memory. The sensation of unseen eyes, drifting lanterns, and whispers carried on the wind persists. Figures and shadows remain vivid in recollection, and every alley, street, and square continues to exist as part of the haunting story. The village leaves a lasting impression, a place where memory, perception, and presence converge. Darkwater Village endures as a place where time, memory, and spectral presence coexist. Streets, homes, and lantern-lit paths remain alive, responsive, and immersive. Shadows glide silently, figures emerge and vanish, and faint cries and whispers drift along the lanes. Every corner, every step, and every flickering light is a part of the village's ongoing rhythm, a continuous testament to haunting, presence, and the unseen world that exists just beyond perception. The village itself seems to groan beneath the roads and paths, an almost imperceptible warning for those who enter. Footsteps, whispers, and cries follow each visitor, creating a persistent awareness of being watched and guided. Darkwater Village is more than a location, it is an experience, a living, breathing presence that endures, silent yet expressive, immersive yet intangible, a place where the haunted and the observer exist together, forever intertwined. Thank you, my dear friend, for walking with me tonight through the haunted backroad villages of West Virginia. These villages may seem quiet by day, but by night they are alive with shadows, whispers, and spirits that refuse to rest. If you ever wander through a backroad village at night, and fog drifts low, or shadows move along streets, or lanterns appear floating above porches, remember this. Not every shadow is harmless. Not every street is safe. And not every figure belongs to the world of the living. Walk carefully. Keep your lanterns close. And may the spirits of the backroad villages leave you to return safely until our next haunted journey, my dear friend. 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 Until our next haunted journey, my dear